Flosstube. My name is Becca, and I am SamBrie Stitches here on Flosstube and Instagram. And this is another special edition of Interview with the Flosstuber. I am very excited to be here with Ymir. I've been wanting to interview her for a while, but I know she's been going through some huge life changes with moving and such. And so we were finally able to set up an interview, which is really cool. I enjoy her channel. She stitches like teeny tiny little projects. I think that's what everybody knows her for. And they're beautiful and they're very inspiring. And I kind of live through her stitching because I don't think I will ever stitch that teeny or tiny at all. So, and also she is a very talented dyer, which I'm sure we will talk a little bit more through the interview as well. So that's a very exciting venture that she started not too long ago, actually. So we will get jumping into the interview. How are you doing today, Ymir?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me. Hello, everyone. I'm super excited to be here and I want to sit down and chat. So why not?
I'm excited too. I know it's late there. And
I'm a night owl. So. I'm a night owl, so don't worry.
Nice. I would be a night owl more than a morning person. It takes me a little while to wake up in the morning, so I could probably be a night owl too. Especially if there was like one of those stitching rooms, you know, at the retreats and stuff. I think I could sit up at the night owl room. So very cool. So we'll jump into the questions. And the first one is, why did you start a Flosstube and were there any particular motivations?
For me, I started a Flosstube mainly to just keep track of things. But also when I technically started my Flosstube, I never really made it live. And I also did it very like discreetly. I live with my boyfriend and he didn't know until like months later. I think I thought he knew. I mean, I would sneak off to the room. I would be talking to myself. Hello, I thought he would know, but he didn't realize. But the majority of the time, the main reason was to pretty much document and just have it there. And I just decided to like share it. My first Flosstube, it was very much kind of like a stitch with me introduction, just my hands, because I also really, you know, were uncomfortable sometimes and I wanted to keep it that way. And a lot of the videos that I haven't made live are pretty much that until like one day I was like, whatever, I'll just say it in front of this camera.
Nice. Nice. So you have a lot of recordings that you've just never posted? Is that what you know? I think a lot of us do that though, especially like with my first video. I think I recorded, I want to say maybe 2 or 3 times, you know, before finally just posting one and just be like, look, this is the best it's going to get. So
I agree. I'm a very much of like a note taker. I like write everything, list, and like I keep all of my like raw files, like my everything. And it's very interesting to me to go back like years later, you know, whether I'm cleaning out my iPad, my computer, my hard drives. I have a few like terabytes full of just stuff, but I'll just sit there and really like reflect on 5 years ago. You know, that's pretty much what happened when I fell into the whole dyeing adventure. It was very much me looking at my past and now like pushing it into my present. So, you know, like some of those recordings, I'm like, they're silly, but I'm pretty sure I'll probably be cracking up a few years from now. Like, oh my God.
That's so cool. I didn't even think about that. Yeah, I guess when you're going back through old, you know, computers and stuff to clean them out, it basically is like a little time capsule of, you know, then and now. So that's really neat. Yeah. So that may lead us into the next question, which is, do you have a blog of any sort?
I don't have a blog, and it's mainly because English isn't my first language.
Oh,
Spanish. So I tend to really like mix everything, especially sometimes when I talk and imagine spelling. I can barely spell my names. Imagine me like editing, like a blog. So it could be very like super like perfect.
yeah.
And I'm very about presentation, and I'm pretty sure I can do it, but I'm scared. And I want to be a writer. I want to write a book one day, but I'm just scared.
Well, maybe dipping your toes into the blog will help you with writing your book down the line. But yeah, I think a lot of people don't really have blogs anymore. From the interviews that I've done, not very many. They use like Instagram or YouTube, or like you with your older electronics going back through stuff. So yeah, but maybe that would be a good way to dip your toes into getting your book going. That would be pretty cool.
Yeah, we'll
Um,
see. Never know.
do you have ideas on what type of book you'd want to do, or is it just something you just want to write a book in some point in your life?
Um, I want to write a book at some point in my life. I do. My life has been pretty interesting, very
That's
interesting.
cool.
And sometimes when I talk to people about it, or we're just chit chatting, it's just very humbling to reflect back on my past and just a lot of things that happened. I'm not sure if it's also because I'm in New York. I'm a born and raised New Yorker, so we always have like a lot
Always
of like
something.
interaction. So there's always some good juice and gossip to share. But yeah, like something, whether it's like a myself type thing, or maybe something like developmental, or research, because I do come from like an acupuncture medical background. So maybe something like that. I don't know.
Very cool. Well, at least you put some thought into it. That's a good first step. So definitely. So how did you learn to stitch, and how long have you been stitching?
So I pretty much learned technically how to stitch from my grandmother. When I was younger, we had the big like plastic canvases. Like it
Okay. Yep.
wasn't like Ada. I don't even know what it's called, but it's just like the gigantic ones. And I remember that we would stitch, and it wasn't with, I don't remember, I think it was like with the big like needle, but also I would just do it with like the yarn, like straight.
Yarn. Yep.
Um, and like over time, like I learned how to do it, knew the basics. And then over time, as I got a little bit older, she used to crochet like she actually used to crochet with the DMC Perlay, like the one that comes in the little ball. So to me, small was small. Like I just thought that was like the normal size based on what I learned from her, because those were like little like tablecloths that she's do. So when I came into cross stitching, it was just very like, oh yeah, I remember this from the huge canvas just being smaller. Like now I'm an adult, I'm gonna stitch on like actual real fabric versus like stitching with the plastic canvas. But I got the basics from my grandmother, and then she let me loose.
That's awesome. That's so neat. My mother-in-law and my husband's grandma did plastic canvas where they made like the tissue cover boxes and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's yarn and plastic. Yep. That's really neat. So do you have a favorite project that you've stitched so far?
Love all of my projects, to be honest with you. But I am currently working on a project that I'll share. I briefly spoke about it in my last Flosstube. I've been diving deep into like history, my heritage. We have a lot of things going on, like politically, and all this good stuff. So I've been working on pretty much like documenting names. So it's been very interesting for me to chart a lot of like names, but also like understanding the significance behind the names. And it's to the point where I'll sleep and I'm thinking about like this project. And I'm like, I think it's one of the most exciting projects that I've felt in a while. So I would say it's my favorite, even though it's not complete.
That is exciting though. And that's huge. Is that something that you're doing for yourself, or are you charting it for, the community?
For myself, I don't have a problem sharing it with other people. It's not going to be something that's going to be done in 6 months or a year. I think it's going to be like ongoing. A seed that's always going to keep on being planted. So it's just probably going to be a lifelong project for me, as long as I have as much fabric as I can. So my only dilemma is what size I want to do it, as far as like yardage of fabric. Do I want to do it on like a quarter, a full yard? And honestly, sadly, without diving so deep, I wouldn't be surprised if I would end up having to do 2 half yards or 2 full yards, because there's so many different names that we have to like read about or learn about. And it's just, you can't, there's a saying in Spanish, you can't cover the sun with one hand. So you really can't, but I want to cover it like with cross stitching.
I understand.
So I'm excited about it.
Oh, that sounds amazing. Yeah, I understand that, because you want to make sure that all the names are represented, and I think it will be an ongoing project, especially with current events and everything like that. And everything in the past you can get done, but it's an ongoing current event that will just add to your list, basically. So that's amazing. That's going to be fun to watch, I think, for everybody too. I'm
super excited. Super excited. Like, I daydream about it. I I'll like sleep and think about it. I'll wake up and like I'll be at work, and on my downtime I'm thinking about just layouts, because I'm a very typography type person. Like, I'm obsessed.
That's so cool. And I assume you're using your silks too, right?
Yes, definitely. Absolutely. Like I'm super excited. I'm happy about it. I think it's one of fun. Yeah.
So what do you enjoy most about stitching?
I think for me is diving in and forgetting everything. And just when you're like in the cartoons where like they're like driving and you see the scenery like going by. Like, I feel like I'm in the car and I'm cross stitching. Like, I'm the like, and like the scenery is just going by, and like the time that passes by, the time goes so fast, but for me it's still so slow. And that's what I love about cross stitching.
That is a very good point. Because I do notice, and actually today it happened to me. I was stitching, I took a break from cleaning, I was stitching, and next time I looked at my watch, I was like, oh my gosh, that much time went by. You get lost in it, basically. It's just like a mesmerizing hobby. That's awesome. I love that. So we're going to get out of stitching a little bit and kind of get to know more about you.
Yes.
And the next question is, what's your favorite genre of book or movie? And also music, if you want to throw that in.
For me, I like very much like documentaries, and I like history and like just learning new things. I feel like I'll never have enough time to learn. So if I can like hear it, read it, watch it, like that's all me. So a lot of like, whether it's like historical documentaries, I'm all for it. Of course I like, like the like crime scene and all these different things, but factual, like I want to see the process. Like, I want to learn and understand, the whole aspect of that. And as far as books for me, also, I'm very much into like self-help, developmental, but also I like reading about other people's lives, you know, like an amazing book that, I mean, pretty much a lot of people have read or heard, you know, like with like the Michelle Obama book, Barack Obama books. So like, it's just like, I love these books that are like, you get to like hear or read about other people's lives, and you walk out of, like, you close the book or you end the chapter or end the book and you're like, wow, like I am invigorated, like I am inspired. And those are my favorite books, because I'm just like, you got to read this book. Like like you will, if I spoke to you about the book, you better expect to get an Amazon or whatever delivery at your house, because I'm like pushing the envelope.
That's awesome. You need to get a cut of those if you're going to be like pushing books. Oh, yeah, that's great though. You learn a lot. It's, you know, I like the history, you know, that kind of stuff, you know, learning about how things were years and years ago. I love that kind of stuff. So do you like music at all? Like any type of music?
I listen to pretty much like everything. I'm not picky. However, because I grew up in a Spanish speaking household, I'll tend more to like more like tropical Spanish things. But I don't discriminate anything. Like I really enjoy listening to music whenever I hear it. I mean, I'm in New York, so I pretty much hear it like every 3 seconds. But I don't know, like the analytical, like more like overthinking of myself. Sometimes I'm not listening to the like instruments, I'm listening to the words. So it's just, I don't know, like, I don't know what goes on in here. Like I just start like, oh, wow, did you hear that? What they said? And then of course my boyfriend is like, it's just music. Like just stop it.
Oh no, because there are messages in music. So you're listening to those messages. And it just seems like you constantly just want to learn as much as you can. But yeah, there's definitely messages in music. So I did an interview with Brandy at Be Stitch Me, and she dyes, you know, fabrics and stuff. And she was talking about how she listens to music when she's dyeing. And so that affects like what she's dyeing. Like if it's crazy metal music, it's more like in, you know, what is it? Concentrated colors and stuff like that. So when you're dyeing, what do you listen to anything, or is it just, what kind of process do you do with your dyeing?
So usually if I'm dyeing, I have two options. So if I'm doing more of like stock and it's just something that's already like, I don't have to develop, I will listen to like, I'll watch Flosstube, or I'll watch, or I'll like listen to an audiobook. But then that's where I start like going into like my brain and start like, I always have to have a notebook next to me, because I just get like random thoughts. So I have to like write it down, because I'll forget, because my attention span sometimes will like, so I have to write it down. But then on the flip side, when I'm dyeing and doing like different things, I like to, as I'm listening, I will like reflect on that. And that's where I get like a lot of my names, a lot of like, you know, like meanings to things. And sometimes, although like you'll have like a red and you're like, oh wow, I like this red, but for me that red, I'll remember what I was doing with it, like what happened while I was developing that color and etc. So it's a very much like a process for me, although like on the customer facing, on the like community facing is just a simple color. But for me, it's more than that, because it took a lot for me to get to that.
Yep, it has a story basically to it. That's so cool. I'm glad that I asked that, because I was curious that, you know, how the creators, how your minds work and how your process works with that. So that's really neat that there's a whole story and a history to the color, which is really cool. I love the names you come up with too. So that makes a lot of sense with how your process goes too. So Um, so what fictional place would you most like to go to?
Interesting. So, without diving super deep, I really didn't grow up in a household or environment where I was able to like watch like Disney movies and like all these different things. So as an adult, I've had to like catch up on a lot of things. I like recently like watched The Lion King probably less than 5 years ago, probably three. So I've had to like catch up on a lot of things. One of my like biggest obsessions, and don't judge me because I don't know much about it. I just like the like characters, like the cartoon of it. And I haven't dove in deep into the story. So maybe a few months from now, I may not agree with that cartoon, but just saying, just the visuals. I'm very interested in the Peanuts. How like just like their little like I don't know, like I'm very into like old school what's the word, like cartooning things.
Yep.
So like for some reason I'm like, I want to be in there. Like I want I want to be in the house. Like what's in the house? Like what, like you see them just like walking through. Like I want to be the fly on the wall, like just watching everything. So like I'm not familiar with like the beauty of like Harry Potter and like Hogwarts or whatever, or like all these different things, because I wasn't really exposed to that until I moved out and I became like an adult, where unfortunately I have all these bills to pay.
We all.
Like one thing that I'm always like, I want to be in like one of those cartoon screens, whether it's like the Peanuts, because I've been super obsessed with it. I want to get like all of the like comic strips and all that stuff.
Cool.
It's deep. Like I've dove in deep, like way deep. Or like something like the Looney Tunes, like the like I don't know, like it's just something about cartoons, but it's also probably my drawing background where I'm like, I want to be colorful.
That actually would be fun to go inside a cartoon of any sort, really. But yeah, I think I'd like Looney Tunes for sure, like Bugs Bunny and all that. That's pretty cool. It's a very unique answer too, so that's really neat. Something to think about. So if you could choose to do anything for a day, what would it be?
For me, I feel like I would like to sit down and just write. And although it's easy to say, like I admire people that like write, whether it's like you write TV shows or documentaries and all these different things, but I want to sit down and sit with like historical figures and just be with them and flow through their day to day, but document that. I feel like we have so much that there's so many people that are no longer here or still here. And although we do watch or read about their like lives, whether it's on the tabloids or it's a book that they've written, I would like to be able to be that fly on the wall and actually like document it to the point where it's like
happening.
Like so I don't know, like I don't want to say I want to be a stalker, but
stalking in a good way though. But yeah, no, I totally get that, because a lot of the books that we read now are looking back on facts that were written down, or someone said this and someone said that, but being a real time and writing it as you're there with whatever person you're with, that would be amazing. For sure. You love all the history, and I love that, constantly wanting to learn and get the truth and the facts and everything. And I love that so much. So do you happen to have any other hobbies besides cross stitch? You probably touched on it a little bit through the interview.
Currently, unfortunately, my hobby is like renovations. Currently, my hobby is renovation. But I come from a fine arts background. So prior to like cross stitch, I did do a lot of just jewelry making, like a lot of like super tiny beading. What a surprise. So I did do like a lot of like beading and stuff like that, but it wasn't like cross stitch related. It was more like on the like fine art side. So I really love that. And I actually like designing textiles. And that falls under like all the like saved files that goes into like a hard drive that probably will never be seen.
Until 5 years from now, right?
Yeah, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's neat. So this is one of my favorite questions, and it's, how would your friends describe you?
I think for myself personally, my friends will probably say that I'm the one that's always scheming. I'm always scheming to like figure out, like, I don't know, like I always will gather, and then at the ending of the night or the next day when we're talking about what happened, they're like, well, whose idea was that? And they'll just all point at me. So I'm the creative one for sure. But I'm also the responsible one. So I'm the designated walker. So although I'm the creative side, I'm always a designated walker, but I feel like you'll have fun, but responsibly.
That is good, because then you keep people safe and yourself safe.
Yeah. And it's not about like even like going out. Like I'm even talking about just like in general, like even at work, because you know sometimes you do work with friends and things like that. Even at work, like we enjoy ourselves, and although we work hard, you still have to have fun. And it's not all like seriousness. We have to, you know, crack a smile sometimes.
Yeah, especially at work, you definitely do have to have some fun. Otherwise, that makes for a very long day.
Very long day.
Now, I know that for a fact. So those are all amazing traits. Your friends are very, very lucky. So, love
Thank you.
So, get back into stitching a little bit. And this is, how do you prefer to stitch? Do you use a hoop, a Q-snap, a scroll frame, in hand?
So I've learned pretty much in hand. So the majority of my stitching has been done in hand. But lately, after StitchCon, I think with all of the enabling, after StitchCon, I saw like a few people using like a really like juicy small hoop. Because for me, the majority, all of my stitching is the whole encompassing of my stitching is portability. And I can fold the super down and just have it in my purse, like super easy. Don't have to lug things around. Can have multiple projects in one, like makeup pouch. So for me, like the hoop, if I would fall into the hoop, which I ended up doing because I did buy a hoop, it had to be like small enough. So now with the projects that I'm gonna start diving in, which are way bigger, not like, you know, like they're huge. I'm probably going to be using like half a yard of fabric or probably a yard. So I'll need to be a little bit more organized, but usually it's either the majority is in hand. If I'm stitching, you know, I stitch over one. If no one knows, I stitch over one, 56 count, 46 and above. So for example, if I'm stitching on 56 over one and I have to frog, I'm most likely going to put it on a hoop, frog, and then make my corrections on the hoop, just so I have like everything nicely laid out and to avoid making the same mistake again. And then once I'm set, I'll remove the hoop and continue. But usually it's just either in hand or corrections in the hoop.
Yeah, I just recently, usually I stitch on Ada, and I recently tried, I think it's 32 count Lugana, 1 over 1, and I learned that frogging is horrible with 1 over 1. And I used Q-snap, so it was already in a Q-snap. Oh my gosh, I could only imagine having to frog on 46 and above. I think that would be in timeout for a very long time for me.
I have a few pieces where I'm just like, way, you know, but then that's where I just lose my time, like lose the sense of time because I'm very like focused. And then I'm always over counting over and over again, even if it's silly, but I just want to make sure that I'm doing it right, but I'm still enjoying it. And yeah, as much as we say we hate frogging, like we still enjoy the whole process of it because we have to like fix it back again. And it's part of the process. But yeah, like over one stitching for me, that's my thing. And frankly, when I do it in hand, I still have to do like the stick and poke method because it's over one. So it doesn't really matter if I do like a hoop or in hand, but I mean, don't frog over one, y'all.
Yeah, lesson learned on that. I'm going to start triple counting is what I'm going to start doing.
Yeah, and what I like to do is I like to be super organized. I'm very like, but I'll jump around to have landmarks. So if I'm like, oh, I may have made a mistake here, I'll stop and then I'll go to my other side of the landmark and then work my way through until I can figure out like where it is. Because sometimes over one on a high count, if you're like, okay, I don't know where the mistake is, I have to remove 100 stitches. That's a lot. Yeah. But if you're working towards the mistake in different angles, you figure out, oh, I'm only off by one stitch and I can take off 3 or 4 and then add it here, add it there, and it's correct versus having to remove that whole section and then come back and continue.
That is smart. That's genius.
Sorry, this is like literally like...
No, but that is like, I never thought about that because that makes sense because then you can go back and because when I have to get a second set of eyes, like I have to get my older daughter because she also stitches. I have to call her down and be like, look at this and find out where I made the mistake. But if I did something like that, you can kind of backtrack a little bit. I love that. That's so cool. Wow. Well, everybody just learned something right there. You might be getting a lot of questions about that one.
Yeah, landmarks is the way, like sometimes because you get so upset with yourself sometimes. You're like, oh, like, yeah. I'm so silly. Like, how did I not figure this out? And I'm 100 stitches in. But, you're 100 stitches in. But sometimes, like say you're like by a diagonal or you have a big chunk, you'll remove the whole chunk when all you have to do is just take this out, add the rest here and add the rest here and you're ready to go. So, like you just have to like step back and then go back in. Sometimes the picture is better when you step back and see the bigger picture.
Very, very good advice. I love that. So where is your favorite place that you've traveled and did you bring stitching along when you went?
So for me, I would say there is a favorite place and I didn't bring stitching. And I went to Belize a few years ago and I enjoyed it. I thought I was going to die because no one told me the whole process of traveling to Belize. But yeah, like I quickly, I went and I want to say it was probably 3 different flights, a larger plane from like New York to like Miami and then like Miami to like the main city like San Pedro or like Belize City, and then you had to take like a smaller plane and you go from there to like your destination. So 2 things. No one told me that the plane landed on water. That's the first thing. So I thought we were literally dying. Then the second thing is no one told me that the plane had multiple stops. So I was on the plane where our stop was the last stop.
Oh, geez.
So we would have to like go up, come back down, go up, come back down. And yeah, so that was like my most like terrifying, but also like fun trip. I didn't take stitching with me, sadly. But because of COVID, we had like a pre-planned trip to go to Morocco. Fortunately, that didn't happen, but I'm hoping to go next year. And I am super ready to bring stitching. And I'm super excited because I am going to be in like color heaven when I get there.
Nice. Nice. Yeah, I know a lot of plans were canceled, but hopefully you'll get to go for sure. But yeah, I'm not a big fan of the taking off and landing part of flights. So I don't think that I could have, well, I mean, you have no choice to handle it, but I think I would have, I don't know, been a little freaked out, I guess.
I'm not a religious person, but I think I grew up in a religious household, but I think I prayed like probably like 50 times over. I remember all the prayers like from like years ago. Like I had a full-blown panic attack to the point where when we came back, I rather had taken, we had to take a, and then once you landed, you had to take a boat to get to the hotel.
Oh, geez.
So what ended up happening for us coming back, I was like, you know what? We're going to have to leave 12 hours in advance. We ended up leaving like 12 hours in advance. And I ended up taking the ferry. We took a boat to the boat and I was like, I'll take the ferry. I'm not getting on that plane again.
Yeah, the plane that lands and takes off 50 times.
Oh. And then the pilot is like, you know, driving. I may have a video. He's like driving like nothing, and he like opens up the window, and I'm like, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "What? Am I gonna crash anyone in front of me?" And I'm like, I'm freaking out here. Like it's not funny, but and he has his window open. I'm like, I can't do this. I can't. It was a beautiful place, but just know that the planes land on water.
That's crazy. At least you can laugh and smile about it now, though, because it's funny that you're telling it, you know, now, but being in the moment, Nope, I hope you had an amazing trip.
It was fun. It was an interesting trip. It was fun, but yeah, the travel. Now I laugh about it, but
yes, that is crazy. So what can you not do without for your stitching? Like your favorite go-to must-have besides the basics, of course.
For myself, I think I would say when I'm trying to complete a project, when I'm very structured, because sometimes I'm structured and not structured. When I'm very structured and I'm counting my stitches, I don't use pattern keeper, but I do use a finger counter, which people will use it for like knitting to count rows. So I'll like have it on my finger and then I'll count the stitches. So that way I would still get things done as far as like if I have like goal settings. So I'll have the like numbers, like I'll know like, okay, like 500 stitches. Okay, now I can put it down. I think it's been a super like lifesaver because also when I feel like I'm not getting nowhere because the project is so big, but also in a small scale, you know, you have such a large piece of fabric and you don't think you're covering enough real estate. It's kind of like a safety net. Like it helps me realize like, no girl, you got 500 stitches.
Yeah, you've made some progress.
Yeah.
So you set your own goals, or are you part of any of those groups where you have, you know, counting stitches or that kind of stuff?
I'll set my own goals. Like, you know, say if the chart is, you know, 12,000 stitches, like I'll divide it. You know, I can do 1,000 stitches a day. So I can, if I'm off for a good week, I'll probably do like 75% of that pattern that way. So I'll kind of like set it based on like my schedule or how fast I want to finish the project. And then other times I'll set it aggressively. And then other times I'll just be very romantic about it. Oh, like let me put in 50 stitches a day or, you know, like whatever about it. But mainly when I want to be super structured, it really does help me to like use that because I don't have pattern keeper. I do have the silk stitching app for like 1 or 2 patterns, but this one will help me and it's compact. Like everything is super small and, you know, I keep track of it and super small and no one will ever notice.
Yeah. Well, you like super small. Even when you do your silks, you do them like super tiny. Love it.
All right, y'all, really quickly. So recently, Becca asked me what was something that I can't live without as far as like stitching. And I totally forgot to mention this one. This is a Fiskars like scissor sharpener. I use this to sharpen my embroidery scissors, my little like snips and things like that. I always have it in my bag, super compact, and it is easy to use.
But yeah, it's anything that's super small and compact is easy and portable, which is what you want in your stitching. So that's pretty cool. I like that because there are some projects where I feel like, they're bigger projects and you're looking at it and it just doesn't look like you've done much, but you really have. So I like that, the counting stitches just for your own personal goal.
Yeah, and it's helpful. It's helpful,
Yeah.
Sorry for all the background. Like I forgot
I
to
don't
close
hear anything really.
Okay. I forgot to close the window.
My cars. So.
But yeah, like I think it's helpful. But also like cross stitching is supposed to be fun. It's not supposed to be homework. So sometimes I'm not super structured about it. I'll put it away and I'll just stitch blindly. And then other times, when you have a deadline, you have a deadline. You have to, make it.
Yeah, that's a good point. Very good point. So that kind of leads into, how do you decide on what you're going to work on next?
So a year ago, I would say, because a year ago was when I became like super like linen, like learning about like the whole rabbit hole that we are. So a year ago, I would have been like, oh, like maybe five projects. And I do remember saying, 12 projects, a dozen is my like cap or whatever. Now I'm just like, you only live once, just do it, and then sometimes when I do have like a few projects that I'm thinking of having a deadline, I'll just spin it. Like I have the like spin app and I'll just spin it and I'll intentionally put the pieces that I want to work on. So it's not like, I don't want to work on this, but I spun and it fell on that. So I just kind of like do it that way, but usually it'll be whatever's almost done. And then I'll go back to like whatever's like least done. So it's always like a flip flop.
Yeah, nice. That way you kind of get progress basically, and it changes it up a little bit. I love that. I tried to do the wheel. I think I tried to do it for Mania. I think it was last year. I can't do the wheel. And I'd be like, no, I don't want to work on that. So I like that you only put projects that you actually want to work on, because I got there, I gave up on the wheel.
Yeah. So. Yeah. And it's also like, I put it there kind of like in a way of like, when you get like all these new charts and you're like, oh my God, I want to start all of these. Like you're going on the wheel if that's how I feel about you. I want to work on this, but I don't have 2 extra like hands to like simultaneously like stitch on. So I want to be excited to work on it, and if I don't want to be excited, like I'll put it off to the side because that's where mistakes happens. That's where like the frustration falls. And then sometimes you'll like abandon a whip that you just needed an extra 500 stitches on,
Yeah. Yeah. It's a good way to look at it for sure. So we are down to the last question. And this is one of my most favorite ones. And it's, what's the best thing that has happened to you within the past couple of years?
I think aside from growing my community, because, before like cross stitch and all these different things, I was very into school, which this year has pretty much been the only year ever in my life where I've never been in school, ever. Wow. So finishing school has been amazing. I'm like, I don't know what to do with myself. But then being able to jump into like such a loving community like this, to the point where now I'm like, oh my God, I can go to XYZ place and I'll be sure to find friends or people that I can meet up with. I think that's something that maybe a lot of people don't realize that, perfect example. Today I was scrolling through my phone on Instagram on the way to on the way to work. And I've been scrolling for the past few days and I'll like different pictures. And what people don't realize, or the example for me is I'm scrolling through yesterday, day before, and I'm liking pictures. So today I happened to like scroll to how when you scroll with all the pictures. Mm-hmm. So instead of scrolling that way, I was scrolling where it's like one picture, you read the caption, another picture, you read the caption. Okay. Yep. Scrolling on like the explore side. So I happened to scroll and I just see some cross stitching and I see something along the lines of New York City or whatever, like, oh, leaving New York City today. And I was like, oh man, like I didn't know you were in New York City. We would have been able to meet up. So of course I commented that and the person was like, oh, I would love to, like, let's meet up next time. Perfect. So I clicked deeper into, the profile and I'm like, so apparently I've been liking all of your pictures for the past week that you've been here under my explore page. And it's not like the pictures were back to back, but a picture here and there. And I didn't even realize that this person was in the same city as me. Meanwhile, I've been complaining, talking about that I don't have any stitchy friends in New York. So I think that part where it's like anywhere you go, you can just put that little bulletin of I'm going to this place. I feel like someone will raise their hand and say, yeah, I'm here. Yep. Like, let's meet up. And not a lot of people can do that, and I think for us, like, we're everywhere and it's such a great blessing. I think that's been the best thing that has happened to me because I'm very like focused into my books, like into like whatever I'm working on, and being able to come out and just interact with different people and say like I have friends everywhere, which now I really do. It's pretty much like the best thing that's happened to me. And being able to just pick with anyone, like pick up the phone or message them and get into like all of these deeper conversations. And it's based on we have the same common hobby per se, but everyone has a completely different daytime thing, Yep. Perfect example. I was on one of my local pages for like cross stitching because I'm trying to find New Yorkers that cross stitch. And someone had posted a picture and I don't remember the name or anything. I just remember it was like an Olympian with a gold medal. And he or they, I'm not sure what their pronouns are, had a knitted piece in their hand. And in our group, it's like, wow, like this person is a knitter, but is an Olympian, So you'll have a cross stitcher and they're a doctor. You'll have a cross stitcher and they're this or that. And it's very interesting. Like you can have all of these like meaningful conversations. And sometimes it just grows into something bigger. And I won't give that up for anything. Like it's mine.
Yeah, no, I love that. Yeah, the community is amazing. Because of the community, before I even had Flosstube, just being part of the Facebook stitching groups is how my local group started meeting up. It was just random comments on somebody's post and everybody just said, hey, let's hang out. And that's how it started. And funny you said that because my husband the other day took us up to Hurricane Ridge, is about an hour away. And it's a huge tourist area for people coming in from, all over the world, seriously, to Washington State to go to Hurricane Ridge. And I was sitting there stitching just at close to the visitor center while my husband and daughter went hiking. So I'm doing my fill-in on my piece. And I had one lady stop and she was like, are you stitching? And I was like, yeah, because usually people are like, are you sewing or are you knitting or something? She knew stitching. And I was like, yeah. And she stopped and talked for a little bit. You know, they were there visiting, and she didn't bring her stitching, but she's a cross stitcher. I told her, you know, about my channel and my Instagram. And that was like the coolest thing ever because, like you said, there are stitchers everywhere. And then another lady stopped and recognized it, but she embroiders, but she still appreciated, you know, the stitching. And it was just the coolest thing because no matter where you are, you could run into a fellow stitcher and become friends. It's an amazing community. I love it. Love it so
And
much.
it's very interesting. Like I haven't bumped into anyone that's like, oh, you're stitching. Let's never keep in touch. You know, like we're always like, oh, like you can sleep over if you want. Like, you know, like we're family. You know, so it's so like interesting to the point where it's like, no, like we become friends now. Like you come into the city and we'll like meet up. And it's that relationship that just off of a simple needle thread and fabric that flows through lifetime relationships. And, you know, like I see like a lot of like duos or like on channels or on different like Instagram feeds, and I'm like, wow, like especially the ones that have been friends for years, I'm like, I want that, like I admire that, you know. It's just very, I think it's inspiring. I love it.
And I think since we're talking about this will go up in the midst of Common Threaded Stitcher, which we are both part of the, I guess, the teammate group for it. That was Kia B came up with it with her husband, Nathan. But I feel very honored to be part of it because it has a special meaning to me. I actually made a very close friend who we call each other best friends from it. So that's just another example of how this community kind of comes together and they participate in different things and then friendships come out of it. So I'm really excited to see what happens with Common Threaded Stitcher too, and very honored to be a part of it. So I'm glad that you are too, because it seems like you have the same views and the same thought process that I do. And I think that's why Kia asked us to be part of the team was because of that. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm super excited. You know, like obviously like my first go around, although I've always sat in the sidelines, like watching and, you know, like just diving deep into the hashtag, you know, and just really like scrolling through, but you learn so much, you know, and it's interesting because there's always like, oh, like you know, people go on Instagram or whatever, they get lost in time. And I'm like, I'm doing market research when I'm on Instagram. I don't know about you. I'm learning different things.
Right.
I have like my little like save button where I'm saving like different charts or like patterns or like things, and just finding so much inspiration to the point where like I just feel like my feed currently is educational and inspirational to me versus like a waste of time or like a pass of time. And I feel like a lot of our feeds are like that compared to like those that really don't have like the hobbies or whatever.
Right.
You know? But yeah, like even like with me with the Common Threaded Stitcher previous go rounds, I remember I like bumped into like a few things, and I think that's where I learned like, oh, like you're doing over one, like you're not normal type thing, because I would see like what people were doing. And then I would just like read, because sometimes, you know, like a picture just says 1,000 words, but the comments and the interactions below it really like wraps up the present into the bow, because you get to have the full story. And, you know, like, and I, again, where I'm like diving deep, although I'm liking a picture, I like to read all the comments because I like to hear the story and the interactions, and you learn a lot from that way.
You do. Yep. And that's maybe this go around, you'll find some New York stitchers that, you know, want to meet up and you guys can start a stitchy group. You never know. So hope so. That'd be amazing. I wish everybody had a local stitching group. I wish they did. But until then, there's Zoom. So it's not the
Definitely.
same, but it's still nice. So
Definitely. I feel like there needs to be a way. I know we have like the like the EGA or whatever, but I feel like there is, or maybe there should be a like um how they do like the 23andMe, like the ancestry thing where it's like, oh, like you put your DNA, like it should be like cross stitcher, like you put like your cross stitch like pin location, and then like everyone is able to like put that there, and it's a safe way. And then if you're like, oh, this person is like super close to me, like I'll email them or whatever, and it's still like in a secure way. If there's any like tech friends that are listening to this,
I was like there's an app suggestion right there.
Yeah.
Somebody create that app and it would be done. Similar to dating apps, but it would be like a cross stitching app where it's all somebody make that.
Please do. Like,
somebody make that.
Please do. Like, I think it would be very useful. And then it's also like you're voluntarily putting it there, and you don't have to like put like you can use like your screen name or whatever. But if you keep your pin and your location, like you can kind of like see where other people are, and then you can zoom in and out if you're going to California or whatever. Like you can put it based on your location, and you can kind of like see like if there's other cross stitches around, and why not?
That's a great idea. I know some Facebook groups do that with like the map, and they'll add people to it if you comment below, but not everybody's on Facebook and not everybody's on Instagram. So an app that is friendly to both Android and Apple would be great. So hopefully
it's just an app.
Just to bring stitchers together.
Just a map. Yeah, just a map and a little look at us. We're developing an app now.
I know, right?
Just a map and like an inbox, and it's like contact or upload like your new location. And that's that. You have it just sitting there. And that's that,
That's awesome. I think that is the perfect way to end the interview, because that gets the wheels and gears turning, hopefully, for some people. I know it does for me, but I'm not an app developer, so we'll see. But thank you so much. I'm so glad that we finally got to do this. I wanted to let you get somewhat settled because I know you've been super busy. So thank you for taking time out of your day. I really appreciate it. This was an awesome interview, really getting to know you. And so thank you.
Thank you for having me. I love to chit chat about cross stitch. I'll make time. Doesn't matter. Like even if I'm sitting like on the bathroom floor, like I'll make sure, even though I'm sitting on the bathroom floor, guys, I'll make sure that there's always like there's always time. And I always enjoy to share. Like for me, my doors are always open, always there for questions, comments, concerns, or whatever, app developments, things. Like I'm always here for that, like it's about the relationships and the interactions for me always.
That's true. Well, that's awesome. And I'll be linking everything below so you can check out Yamira's silks, her Instagram, her Flosstube, everything. So just check down in the description box and everything will be there. And until then, I'll say bye to everybody on Flosstube.
Bye, Flosstube.